because all I did was just take the talking points that's been in the media, not just for after October 7th, all through the conflict. It's always like, we need to kill it. All right, you need to kill 5? No, kill 10. You need to kill some? No, kill all. This is what satire does. It take reality, flip it on its head, exaggerate it, and then you can see how sometimes very uncomfortable and even sometimes stupid that sounds. Because I was just reacting to whatever the media is telling me. It's like, oh yeah, okay, let's do it. There's no pushback. So suddenly, the person who's proposing the most extreme measures is like, oh, we'll take it, oh no, that's too much.
Obviously, you started the last interview with, I mean, I would argue savagely dark humour involving your wife. How you've been trying to kill her and she was using your kids as human shields and stuff. And I'll be honest with you.
And I'm still trying to. But you know what, when I failed, you know what I did? I went out to the house and I just like randomly slapped other neighbors.
So,
you know,
it's interesting.
By mistake. First of all, let's start with condemnation.
Yes.
You want my opinion?
Yes.
Condemning Hamas or condemning Israel?
Yes.
Completely useless. Completely useless.
Why?
I condemn Hamas, you condemn Israel, interview is over. What happened? Nothing. It is just checkpoint, like morality checkpoints.
But
This is the problem with the news. We go into the circular motion of the same answer. One thing that I have noticed, not just on the coverage of these events, every time this starts, people say, we don't know what's happening. It's a very complicated situation.
Right.
What is happening now? And for me, as a viewer, if a conflict that's been there for 75 years and the media with all this technology has been covering it and we hear the same exact words, we don't know what's happening. It's complicated. It's a very complex. That is a failure of the media apparatus. That is the failure to themselves and for the audience, because why every time this happens, it seems like it is happening from point zero. I want to start with anti-Semitism.
Yes.
I think it's an important issue.
Yes.
I think there is a rise of anti-Semitism in the world, and I think there is. This is very dangerous. And I, as a Muslim, who has been through events where there were terrorist attacks somewhere, and that reflects on us, and I think it is very important to agree on the language, because the word anti-Semite has been used and abused, and most of the time not for interest of the Jewish people. Because the first 2 days of the coverage, I watched the news and there was a lot of protest that was led by Jewish Voice for Peace. And they were led by people who opposed the Israeli attack on the civilians. And I remember quite well, many of the Republican representatives in Congress came out and they were calling these the global intifada, the global jihad, or they say like, these are, and I quote, Iranian-backed jihadists. And I said, wait a minute, but most of those people are Jewish. Those people who took over the Capitol, the same people who took over Central Station in New York, which is known as the biggest civil disobedience event in America in the last 2 decades, they were all Jewish. And then I find Nikki Haley saying anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. And then I remember it's like, oh, Jewish people in America are saddled by the fact that they are not citizens of America or citizens of the world, but they are citizens of Israel, and they have to back Israel in whatever they do. And these are not my words, these are the words of Jon Stewart. The saddest thing that I saw is the people that were in so much support of Israel are anti-Semite themselves. MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, she said like, oh, those are, I send my aides, and they took pictures of the protesters. Basically, she's surveilling protesters. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is very known for a very famous post in 2018 where she blamed the California fires on a Jewish space laser gun. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? It's just like, oh, they were burned because Jewish investors, Rothschild and Feinstein, anything that ends with Stein, because that's, of course, sounds Jewish, they put a satellite and shooting laser beams to... And not just her. You have Steve Skoulas, thank you so much. He is now the Speaker of the House, and he has been invited before for an organization that was funded by David Duke, the founder of the KKK. You have Kevin McCarthy, who is the former minority speaker, leader of the Republican Party in the House, and he accused Jewish billionaires of rigging the midterm. So how come those people are accusing us of anti-Semites? So here's the thing. So let's go to the equation that Nikki Haley put on Twitter. Anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. No, it is true. People who hate Jews, they're also anti-Zionists. It is true. And you could be someone who hate Zionists, who don't like Zionism, and you are Semite. You could even be Jewish. And guess what? You could be a Zionist, like those people, supporting Israel, and at the same time you hate the Jews, because the chant, Jews will not replace us, these echoed in Charlottesville. It did not echo in Gaza. I mean, in Gaza they say worse stuff in between the bombing on their downtime. And these are the same people who are seen with Nick Fuentes, with Stephen Bannon. And you know what's most interesting?
Trump had him for dinner at Mar-a-Lago.
And all of those people are buddies with Benjamin Netanyahu. So how does this work? How does this work? And you know the people who speak against this, like Jon Stewart, like Bernie Sanders, like Naomi Klein, what do they call these people? What do they call them? Self-hating Jews. And you know what else now they call them? They call them capos. Capos. You know what's capos? Capos, basically these were the Jewish inmate in Auschwitz that were forced by the Nazis to stand as guards on their own inmates. You see how degrading this is. And this is the way to shut down conversation. Anti-Semite, Islamophobe, you hate America, you hate the military, you hate Egypt, war on Christmas. This is how you shut an environment that does not allow disagreement is not an environment made for growth. It's an environment made for control. The reason that I started with anti-Semitism, because I wanted to make sure to clear any confusion that when I speak about Israel, I'm speaking about Israel.
Yes.
When I'm speaking about Jewish people, I'm speaking about Jewish people.
Yes.
At the same time, when I tell you why does that happen, it doesn't mean that I condone it. There's a difference between explanation and justification. Those people who are exhilarated, what do they see? They see Israel as a criminal state who is killing their people, and in the same time, they are supported by the international community in America. They have no guns, they have no superpower backing them. All they have is just a feeling of happiness, like, yes, our enemies that we cannot touch them has been hurt. All they can think about, that these are their enemies that have been hurt, right? Because those people has been, from a very young age, what have they seen? They're not being heard by the media. The plight and the suffering of their brothers in Israel, in Palestine, in the Arab world are not being heard. People in Iraq, you know, like when America and Britain invaded Iraq, right? What the Arabs saw? It's like two superpowers are coming in on just regular people. So whenever there was like a bomb or like an attack on American troops, people would celebrate. Yeah, they're our enemies. Emotions are very inflammatory, and it is not right. But those people had nothing else. All they say is just like shout. All they say is like to rejoice. Like, yeah, if I cannot get you, I'm just gonna scratch your eyes. I'm gonna scratch your eyes because you've been beating me all the time, and you have the whole international community backing you up, and all I can do is scream. What does the Western audience see? They see people rejoicing for the death of innocent civilians in Israel. This is what have the Arabs seen for years on the Arab world. For example, if you look up Sidrot cinema, this is in 2014 when Israel was bombing Gaza as usual, and the Israelis in the Sidrot, the kibbutz or the settlement, they went on a hill and they had popcorn and they had drinks and they were like watching the show and they were cheering with every rocket coming down. This is what we see. Western people didn't see that. Google the wedding of hate. This is like a Jewish wedding in Israel where they were celebrating the arsons and the burning of Palestinians. I want to say, like, this is what they see. I mean, for example, there is a very famous video for Samer Abu Za'anin, who is like a young kid that he was shot point blank by an Israeli soldier, and he was not allowed to have any medical attention. And as his dead body was being put into the ambulance, the Jewish settlers were cheering. So for an Arab audience, this is what we see every day. So when they see, oh, we heard them back, we heard their people like they heard back, it is not right. But this is what hate does. It escalates, it feeds each other. Radicalism feeds it. It is terrible, and it is just like a vicious circle. So when I invited Jon Stewart to my show, as much of like a reception that if you see on the YouTube, people just like
No,
we had to cut the 5-minute standing ovation for broadcast. People were on their feet for 5 minutes. They could not believe it. I remember John Steele telling me I could never imagine that a Jewish guy from New Jersey would have that kind of reception in Cairo. And yet, on the internet, people who would, what? You brought a Jew on your show? Why you are with a Jew? Yes, hate is there. Yes. So, and the thing is like why we do not see each other, people in the Middle East, people in the West, that we do not put ourselves in each other's shoes. And I'm going to tell you a very nice story.
Tell
and
away.
This is the story, surprise, surprise, of the suffering and the plight of the Jewish people. And I want to say that because it is very interesting when you see the trauma and the suffering that the people on the other side went through, you might understand why they're coming. So this is, see this? This is a map of all of the history of the expulsion of the Jews in Europe. They've been like, I have never seen a minority being kicked around this much, right? And of course, this comes back to the, the whole idea about the original sin, that you have betrayed Jesus Christ, the blood of Jesus is on your hand. And then comes the 11th century. At that time, Jewish people were not allowed to own land. They were just peasants. Even some of the professions they were not even allowed to participate in. But they were allowed to do one thing, usury, money lending, because it was prohibited by the Catholic Church to engage into that. So what happens when you work in money? You get richer, right? And those Jews lived in ghettos. Now, ghettos was not just like isolated neighborhoods in cities. Sometimes ghettos were outside the city. This is like how isolated they were. And in those ghettos, they have to pay gold to the mayor or the governor or the prince or the noble. So they would see, you're getting richer. I need more taxes. So they pay tax. What happens when you have a business and they increase your rent? You increase your service, increase the taxes. So what happened? The Christians started to default. And suddenly, the image of the greedy Jew was created. Shylock, Merchant of Venice. This was the image, greedy Jew, the greedy Jew. This was created because of their conditions. And it became worse in 1095, when Pope Urban II called for the first crusade to go and save the birth of Jesus from the unbelievers Muslim. And this crusade did not kill a single Muslim. You know how many people they killed? 2,000 Jews. Because it's like, wait, the non-believers are all over there. Why? So they went to it's called the Crusades of the Rhineland. So they went to the Jewish community because, hey, we own the money, so let's kill them better than paying them. And then came the plague. And then all of the things like, oh, they're killing babies, who would do that to a baby, And they accused them of poisoning the well. This was the kind of oppression that the Jewish people went through. Fast forward 19th century, there was like the Eastern Jew in Ukraine and Russia, and there was the Western Jews in Europe. Those people in the Eastern Jews had to immigrate because there were pogroms and they were like, kicked out. And at a certain point, the people in the West, especially in England, it's like, there are too many Jews. We need a solution. A solution for what? For the Jewish problem. So it's like we need to get rid of them. And you know what? Palestine was not even in the A list. Palestine was in the B list. Because England proposed 6,000 square miles in Uganda for the Jews, 1903. And the reason why Palestine was not on the list, that it was objected by a lot of rabbis that said, like, it's a promised land, but only when the Messiah comes. But there were other options, Argentina, South Africa, Uganda, Madagascar. And eventually, they said, all right, let's do Palestine. So they went to Palestine in 1914. There was 700,000 people living in Palestine, 3% were Jewish. 1917, Balfour Declaration. Arthur Balfour, he called the Jewish people in England that they are alien and hostile race. And the thing is, the only Jewish member of the parliament, of the English parliament, Lord Montenegro, he objects, like, these are British citizens, we should not kick them out. So they pushed them, but it was not going fast enough. Came the Nazis. And then it was not about the solution anymore. It was the end losing, the final solution by Hitler, because he needed an answer for the Jewish question, die Judifrage. And then, as you see, the Holocaust happened, the most orchestrated, industrialized, horrible genocide in our modern time. 6 million Jews died. So it accelerated, and they went First of all, they left Eastern Europe and they went to West Europe and went to America and they were turned down and they were pushed towards Palestine. So by 1948, right before the declaration of the State of Israel, there were 2 million people living there. Only 30% of them was Jews. So the whole idea of like a land without a people to a people without a land was a marketing thing. They were already Palestinians. So suddenly, from our perspective, the Jewish problem is not a Jewish problem, is not a Middle Eastern problem, is not an Arab problem, it is a European problem. It was pushed on us together with the guilt because now we are the anti-Semite. Now we are the Jewish hater. And not just that, they took land. So people look at this like, why are we even, we had a lot of refugees coming in. And during that, there was a lot of, as you know, Zionist militia, the Aragon, the Haganah, all of these people were killing Palestinians. The famous massacre of Deir Yassin. You're talking about the atrocities of October 7th, it's horrible. But in the Arab mind, there is Deir Yassin, where there is an incredible movie called Tantoura, Tantoura, where the Israeli members of those militias, they talk about the atrocities that they did, including opening up the pregnant women's bellies and having bets if the boy inside is a boy or a girl. It is one of the most horrific, and they talk about it, some talk about with regret, and some talk about with pleasure. We did that, right? So you have King David. I think your Prime Minister, Mr. Sunak, was there. And if I was British, I would question this. Because as you know, King David was bombed by the Aragon militias. 91 British soldiers died. I don't know, if I was British, how come my Prime Minister would have the nerve to stay in that hotel? I mean, you know, the ghost of the 91 British soldiers, that must be haunting for them. So you see, when you see all of that, and you see that suddenly, overnight, 1948, there were 1.5 million Palestinians, half of them, 3/4 of them were overnight pushed into refugees. Yeah. And this is why it's called the Nakba, the catastrophe. So now we have all of this building up into the minds. And suddenly this was like a conflict, a hate, a problem that we didn't have to do anything with. This was basically pushed on us by the Europeans. It's important when you talk about the conflict that you talk about the root causes, right? No, there was like a vibrant Palestinian culture happening over there. And right now they are erasing this culture. Suddenly I'm thinking of like Israeli feta cheese, Israeli hummus. Oh, that's an insult, Israeli hummus. Come on, I mean, that's not fair. You are someone who's always spoken against culture, cancel culture. Right now, a whole culture is cancelled. There are 2.2 million people living in Gaza. There are 3.5 million people living in the West Bank. There is 350,000 people living in East Jerusalem. And there is like 6 or 7 million people living outside. Those people, the Palestinians that were pushed out, they do not have the right to go back. Right now, if you meet Palestinians, you'll see them wearing a necklace with a key. That key is their house that they were kicked out from in Yafa and Haifa. According to the law, those people have absolutely no right to go back. Even if you are a Palestinian with an American passport, they give you hell in order to go in. And yet, a Jewish person born anywhere in the world, born in Poland, born in Ukraine, no question asked, he can jump on a plane, land in Israel, and get the Israeli citizen and take a house that most probably belonged to a Palestinian. So it is not just like, it is an ongoing injustice that has been happening. Now, put yourself in the Arab side. At 1948, you constituted 70% of the population. Suddenly, the UN is giving you 48% of the land, right? Not just that, I mean, the Arab regimes, because they did terribly, and see, this is the thing, like, Arab nationalism at the height of these people feed on each other. You know, because it's very, very important to have a problem. Oh, it's Israel. And for Israel, oh, it's the Palestinian. It's a very good distraction. I mean, sometimes I feel that like the Palestinian cause is very useful for both sides to stay there as attention because it's always a way to reflect. In the mind of the Western audience, they always thought of the Palestinian resistance or the Palestinian side as like Islamic, as militant. No, as a matter of fact, some of the early suicide bombers were female Christian Palestinians because they, like the IRA, you know, they were fighting for a land. The whole idea of Islamization of the whole cause came very later. As a matter of fact, you will find this very interesting because when I saw this, I did not believe it. This, you know, the Fatah movement, which is the PLO, the Fatah. This was their slogan. Can you see? You see, there's a crescent, a cross and a menorah. And they say unitary, democratic, non-sectarian. So basically in the 1960s, Fatah were basically marijuana smoking tree hugger hippies. And yet that didn't work, right? Right? I always hear that like Arabs were giving so many chances for peace. That is not true. As a matter of fact, all along history, Israel didn't give an inch of land by peace. 1973 war, they gave back Sinai because Egypt like initiated the war. 2006, they went out of south of Lebanon because of the resistance they have. Even the disengagement of Gaza, they didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart because they had too much casualties. And even the Oslo Accords, the peace treaty, the one that Isaac Rabin and got the Nobel Prize for, they did it because of the Intifada. So what is the message that Israel is giving to the Arabs? I will never give you anything with peaceful resolution. You will always have to fight for it. The whole thing about the Oslo Accord, there was a video for Netanyahu who was talking to the settlement offer in 2001, and he was bragging about sabotaging. He was talking to us like, I sabotage it, like there was going to be no peace. Yeah, you've seen that, right? Yeah. And in that video, if you remember, when he was saying like you have to hit them hard, 2001, no Hamas at the time. They were talking about the Palestinian Authority. We have to hit them, we have to kill them, we have to make them feel the pain. And then one of them says like Bibi, but wouldn't America kind of just like, so what? The American public is easily manipulated. 80% are with us. It is absurd. And as a new American, where I can have the privilege of being retrospectively angry, I said like, this guy is mocking the government and the people who have been with him all the time. It's like, oh, they can be easily manipulated. They can do it. And even, by the way, even Isaac Rabin, the one who actually did the peace accord, he was known famously, say, the way to actually beat those children is to break their bones, called the broken bones policy. They will like get those kids and break their bones on the pavement. So this has, the whole idea about like Israel wanted peace and Arabs only wanted to fight is a very, very bad representation. The official stand of the Palestinian Authority is that we are just happy with 22% of the land. Just give us like that. Yes, there are people that dissent, but the thing is, you cannot just say, okay, let's talk about peace. And then you take away my land. Let's talk about peace. And there's a kind of like passive aggressiveness happening. Oh, let's talk about it, but I'm going to build settlements. I'm going to suffocate your cities and your villages.
See, I think
and it was leaked in a Likud conference in 2019 that he was bragging about giving Hamas money because this is a way that we can keep Palestinians divided, and yet so we'll never have one. So this is a guy who was.
But look, we can agree about Netanyahu, I think.
No,
right?
but not just Netanyahu. There's a book called The Fear of Peace. It's by Moshe Zimmerman, and he's an Israeli historian, and he said like, the average Israeli citizen does not have a vision of peace. Because for 70 years, this is a country that has been, the war has been going on for, they have been expanding because of war, the military is taking over. So the whole idea of peace is not even there. It's not just Netanyahu. Like you have, I remember you have interviewed Naftali Bennett.
Yes.
And I think you tweeted that like that was like a very kind of reasonable take. Naftali, he went after Queen Rania, and he called up shame on Queen Rania. No, that is exactly what Israel wants, and that is exactly what actually starts Third War III. This is the war solution. These are Palestinians. These are their lands, and then suddenly take them. Why? So they've been basically kicked around from their homes, and now another country should take them. You see what will happen? Imagine this. Now. And because Israeli official has been talking openly about this. It's like, why don't they just go in Sinai? Why they go? You know what would happen? Those people are going to be pushed in Sinai. And with any population, 2 million people, they are living in refugee camp. What do you think will happen? Unrest, chaos. And then after a few years, the Western media will come with their cameras like, oh, look at those Arabs. Oh, they're killing each other. Oh, Israel is good that they got rid of them. And then they will go to the West Bank. And suddenly those 3.5 million people push into Jordan. The whole idea, why does Jordan take them? Why does Egypt take them? The same question. Europe has 44 countries. Why don't they take Israel? America has 50 states. Why don't they give them Florida? I mean, we seem to complain about Florida the whole time. Why don't they just like give Israel? The whole idea was like, oh, you're Arabs, you're all the same. No, no, no. Because what will happen then? So Israel will move into Jordan? It's like, oh, Saudi, why don't you take the Jordanian? This is not a solution. I want to say something about what Queen Radia said.
Okay.
The whole idea about like the West.
Yeah.
I think that in 3 weeks, Israel morally corrupted the West like no other. I think the West will have a lot of time to recover because for years, the West has been telling us, oh, look, we're liberal. We're all about human rights. All are equal. Adopt our values. And then suddenly, you don't want to even to cease. We don't want to even tell Israel to stop. And suddenly we wake up and we find McDonald's are giving free meals to the Israeli because like nothing will make you feel better after killing a bunch of Palestinian kids than a happy meal. Exactly not the way that Israel does it, because if you have one of the most advanced military powers in the world and it takes you 3 weeks, 9,000 Palestinian civilian death, 21,000 injured. As we are talking right now, Israel just bombed Jabalia, which is a known refugee camp. This is not self-defense. You know, like one of the most questions, like, does Israel have the right to defend itself? This is a no-value question. So basically, we're dealing with a very incompetent military force that has been sucking America dry for years, and then they cannot do the job.
But how else do they get rid of Hamas?
Not like that. They've been trying the same thing for years. This is not an eye for an eye anymore. This is an eye, a limb, a life, a house, a neighborhood, a whole population for an eye. And this is very important to look at things in context. When you see how Israelis talk inside their community. There was a very famous post by Uriel Eritzol. He is the speechwriter of Netanyahu. He said, what is so horrific about understanding that the whole Palestinian people are our enemies? All of them are enemy combatants. We should kill them, kill their mother, destroy their homes, the homes that they raised those snakes, so no snakes will be raised in this house anymore. And this was reposted by Ali Chaket, which is the Minister of, wait for it, Justice. They can tell you it's about Hamas, but it's not about Hamas. It is basically, they have said it many times, Piers. This is a way to kind of push them into Sinai. This is not about eradicating Hamas. This ship has sailed. I am sorry, but like, anybody who still believes that this is about Hamas is stupid. Because
I don't agree with that.
Really?
No, because
as a journalist, wouldn't you take anything that an authority would say with a grain of thought?
Yes.
Especially if this authority have a long history of lying. And I'm just going to give a few examples. 1996, they bombed Qana. It's a refugee camp. They killed 106 people. 2006, they bombed Qana again. 2014, they killed 2 teenagers at a checkpoint. They denied, as usual, but CNN was there, so they said, we have to say it. 2018, they killed a medic, a Palestinian medic, and they fabricated a video showing that it's someone else, that he was a human shield. And then 2010, they killed Ahmed Oraikat, denied it, then said, it's okay, it's us. 2021, they bombed the media office in Hamas. And then, 11th May 2022, Shireen Abu Akleh, a reporter, your colleague, she's Palestinian, American citizen, she was shot in the head. And they provided forensic evidence and even a doctor's video that it was not them, it was Islamic Jihad. How can I expect to believe this regime, especially if the president of Israel comes down with this ridiculous thing? This was reported by Sky News, and it was the funniest thing I've seen so much. This was a Colin Powell moment, but like the cheap edition. Like Isaac Herzog, it's like, we have found evidence on one of the terrorists, a manual to create chemical bombs. Why would a foot soldier go into enemy with like a manual to chemical bombing? It's like, is that BYOB, bring your own beer, bomb? It's crazy. And then this is like, this is a manual of Al-Qaeda. So this, and you know what Sky News said? It's like, we cannot confirm or any of this, but we will show it anyway.
So let me respond.
This is a lying government. So 3 days before the attack, the priest and the patriarch of the hospital, because it's called the Baptist Hospital, said that they have received multiple warning from Israel that they're going to hit the hospital. And then at the time of the hit of the hospital, one of the top aides of Netanyahu, he tweeted about like, we hit the hospital, and then he deleted it. And then basically, like, Israel gaslighted the world.
But
it was not us. Over 10 years, Hamas launched 35,000 rockets into Israel.
And many failed.
They killed 69 people. And 25% military, only part of them were civilians. So over 10 years, of 35,000 rockets. They killed 69 people. But in one strike, you want to tell me that these glorified firecrackers caused that kind of damage?
Yes, it looks like they did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The best recruiter for Hamas is Israel. Imagine like a little boy called Rami. He lives in Gaza. You know, he have a horrible life, but like, you know, it's not that bad. I know he has a cousin in the West Bank. He's living a good life. He wake up in the morning and he found out that he was kidnapped by 3 settlers. He was burned alive by kerosene and he was forced to drink the kerosene. His name was Muhammad Abu Khudaira. That settlers did that to him in 2016. So I thought, all right, you know what, I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna find a way to go to Europe. His aunt is a published author and she won a prize in the Frankfurt Book Fair. His name is Adnaya Shalabi. And now she was cancelled because of what's happening, just because of her a Palestinian. His other aunt in America, his name is Amawi. She is a speech therapist, and she was fired because she did not want to sign for government that said that you cannot join BDS, which I don't understand. Why do people choosing to protest peacefully by not buying goods from a certain country? Why would the United States make that its own issue? This Rami is being approached by like, join Hamas, join us, let's go kill Israel. No, I don't want to kill. I'm going to live in Gaza. It's a life. But 97% of water is not good for human consumption. Half of the population are anemic. Even the is not being treated, and it goes into the shores of Israel. It's like, oh, those Palestinians. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So, and then he wakes up in the morning. He doesn't think about killing Jews the first thing in the morning. He thinks about being there at 5 o'clock at the first 50 people in the line for bread, because if he doesn't, he will miss the food for his family. And he goes back, and he finds a message saying that we are going to bomb your house. He comes back, he loses his whole family. Now tell me, what is a proportionate response for that? We are locked in the same thing, what can we do now? But we don't look at what was happening over there. Because all roads goes to the condition that created Hamas. If the Jewish people were expelled from Europe and went to Argentina or South Africa and Uganda and went in and took the land, you would have Hamas in all of these places. You know what I would do? I would give the Palestinians what they deserve. Terrorism is a virus.
Yes.
It's a virus.
I agree.
If a patient with a flu came to you and you're a doctor, how can you treat that patient? How do you treat as a doctor? How do you do?
Well, you're the doctor.
You give them nutrition, fluids, and rest. So the immunity of the body gets rid of the virus on its own. If I received that patient with a flu and I took a sledgehammer, it's like, why are you not getting better? Do you think that patient will get better? No. You are weakening him. You are making him worse. Israel did not just like weaken the body of Palestinians, making them unable to get rid of hate and radicalism. They have openly bolstered about helping and giving money to the same terrorist organization. I don't know, but like as an Israeli citizen listening to this, how come that my prime minister bragging about giving money to the terrorist group that he is using right now to eradicate a whole group of people, and yet using them as an excuse? Isn't that weird? This is like Tony Blair being like found like giving money to Al-Qaeda or ISIS and then going to fight them. How does this work? How does this work?
I agree.
How does this work?
Yeah, but I agree with you.
So yeah, it's a terrorist attack. And Israel is funding them? I mean, this is in the words of Benjamin. This is the thing about Benjamin Netanyahu. He brags about that stuff. So this is a circular question.
Yeah, but
yes,
I agree with you.
Hamas is to blame. Who created Hamas? Who's helping them? And who is allowing for an environment for that kind of hate and destruction of Jewish people to aspire? Who has the power in this equation? Who has the 4th largest and strongest military power? The whole idea about Israel, it's like, oh my God, the Arabs are going to destroy us. Look at the map. They think that Israel is a small, tiny country between the hostile Arab countries. The biggest military power in the Arab world is Egypt. They have a peace treaty. Their neighbors, Jordan, they have a peace treaty. Saudi Arabia, Emirates, either like have like full relationship or like on the way of normalization. Even Syria is not like even like they didn't launch like a single bullet. The only 2 crutches that Israel has is like Hezbollah and Hamas. A few militant, thousands of militant. Syria, is that really formed an existential like threat? Especially if I know that over 13 years, only 69 Israelis were killed.
Would say,
Would that really wipe out Israel? Is Israel that weak?
I think
So if a terrorist takes over the Empire State, instead of taking him out, we bomb the whole Empire State?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Proportion.
That is not even a question.
Well,
that was not even a question, because that would be ridiculous.
talk about-
All of the horrible conditions that Palestinians are living in, is that a justification for Hamas doing what they did in October
No.
7th? Good. There is no justification what Israel is doing now. No Hamas, no terrorist attack justifies this.
Well,
Because
that's-
you have been there.
No, but that's
you
the-
have been there. You
Yeah.
have stood against the Iraq war.
Yes.
And that is too much.
Yeah, but here's the
You are
difference.
killing a whole population.
here's-
Believe me, it is never about Hamas. Israel has been telling the world all the time, they need to clear the Gaza Strip into Egypt.
You think that's always been the plan?
Always there. I mean, they have said it. They have said it many times. Why does Egypt take them? And do you think when Egypt takes them, do you think they go back? No, never. And then when they're done with Gaza, they will go back to the West Bank. They will kind of like build the settlements around them, and then until they push them into Jordan, because that is the plan. Not just Benjamin Netanyahu. Everybody said like, there's no state, two states. It is one state, and it's for the Jewish
I don't
people.
think he believes in a two-state solution.
Nobody believes in a two-state solution. It is one state.
They don't.
You see what you're comparing? It's a militant group. It's a small militant group.
But the
They
shit
were
does-
elected in 2006, and
But
50%
they are-
of the people in Gaza right now are under the age of 16. They were
I
not even
understand.
born.
I understand.
That's the circle city. It's what-
I understand. It's a circular firing
Hamas,
squad.
Hamas,
I know,
Hamas,
I know.
Hamas, Hamas.
I know. Could there still be peace? Could there still
No.
be a two-state
No,
solution?
no,
It can-
it's not about Netanyahu. It is the policy of Israel not to give the Palestinians their seat. It has always been there. Obama, after he left office, he wrote in his book, the problem with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is that one side is extremely powerful and one side is extremely weak. There is absolutely nothing to oblige that strong side to give anything. All over the years, Israel showed you many times that they are not interested in peace. Leave Gaza. Forget Hamas for a second. The West Bank. What have they been doing in the West Bank? The illegal settlements did not stop a single day.
No,
But you see what they're doing in the West Bank right now? They are creating little Gazas. They are creating little Gazas.
Yeah.
And until they are like squeeze them. It's a hilarious documentary called The Wanted 18. And it tells about the incredible story about the residents of Beit Sahur. They said they don't want to depend on the milk coming from the kibbutz. So they bought 18 cows. And they didn't know how to milk the cows. So they were like engineers and doctors. So they sent people to kind of like to learn how to do the farm. So they bought the cows and they started to produce milk and they started to sell the milk to the villages. The Israeli authorities were not very comfortable. So one day the military government came in and was like, those cows, and I quote, constitutes an existential threat to the national security of the state of Israel. You need to get rid of them. And the movie goes about like the hilarious attempts of hiding those cows between the butchers and the houses. And in one scene, a cow is actually running and the Israeli soldiers are like running behind it and they corner it and they're about to kill it. And you know what did the cow say? You didn't fall for this, cows don't speak. Yeah! But you know, it actually said something. You know what did it say? It said Hamas. But anyways. We have been talking about Israel being a democratic state, a secular state for all of its citizens, including its Arab residents, right? Wrong,
Yes.
wrong, wrong, wrong. 2018, there was a resolution that was offered in the Knesset that say that Israel should be a state for all of its citizens. That seems basic, right? That resolution was not even allowed to be discussed. And the rebuttal was, Israel being the state of all of its citizens would threaten the character of the Jewish state. I have a friend of mine, his name is Andrew. He's Palestinian Christian. They do exist. And his family comes from a town called Tarshiha. They announced an auction to sell houses. And then they noticed that most of the applicants were Palestinians. They canceled the auction. Why? Because in each Jewish town, there is something called admission committee that can decide who can live in this town. Sounds like Jim Crow for me. And then they canceled. And you know what they say in the reason? They say, Kafar Radim welcomes all citizens of Israel despite their race, gender, or color. However, the majority of the town would like to preserve the character of the town as being Jewish, Zionist, and secular. How does this go together, secular and Jewish aside? You know, this is a very famous picture. You know, remember this picture? I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
This, for the people who don't know, this from San Augustine, Florida, 18th of June, 1964. This was a white-only motel. And these are black activists who wanted to defy the law and jump into the hotel. This guy is the owner of the hotel. His name is James Brooke. And he was pouring acid to scare them out of the hotel. His neighbor said that James Brooke was a victim because he was just following the law. And you know what James Brooks said? He said, it's not like I don't like black people. I just don't like them in my swimming pools. Now, if an official said that, wouldn't you say that this town has kind of a systemic racism?
Yes.
This quote was not said by James Brooks. It was said by Deton, the head of the Galilee municipality, when he said, I don't like Arabs. I don't just like them in my swimming pools. The town of Nazareth Elite, 2010, the Arab Christians in the town, they requested to set up the Christmas tree next to Nazareth. This is the birthplace of Jesus. And you know what they said? We cannot have it because non-Jewish symbols would offend Jewish residents. I'm talking about this shining example that Israel won't tell the world that we are like the Western world, we are secular. I don't know if you know this, but they're not just like secular, like Christians against their own Arab. I'm talking about like Arabs with Palestinian, with Israeli identity. I'm talking about them being even racist against their own people. 1950, Yemenis immigrants that came from Yemen, and they were in the transition camp waiting to be transferred into Israel. Their kids were taken away from them and given to white Ashkenazi Jews because they were not white enough. The whole thing about the Yemeni children, you can find it in the New York Times, it's called like the forgotten children of Israel. Hamas never claimed that they are the only democracy in the region. They never claimed that they are secular. They never said that they adopt Western tradition. And they definitely, they did not use that lie in order to carpet bomb a whole country. Even when Ethiopian people were immigrated to Israel, Ethiopian Jews, women then report, 2013, that's not like 50 years ago, they reported that they were given against their consent and without their knowledge contraceptive shots so they wouldn't reproduce because they are the wrong color. Israel is a racist, apartheid country that is projecting this shiny example of secularism and democracy for the people, so people can accept whatever they do because they look at Palestinians as lesser people. This is the whole point. And I would like to quote Winston Churchill. He had a quote that say, I don't believe that we have made a great wrong to the Red Indians of America or the black people of Australia because they were replaced by a higher race, a stronger race, a more world-wisely race. This is why Queen Rania is criticizing the West. This is why we here said, like, where are your values? Because this is the crux of the problem. It's not Hamas. It's not Palestine. It is people looking at us as lesser human beings. I refused to come on your show when your producer first called me for the first interview because I was scared. I was afraid. For me, that was a career suicide. Because I'm talking. This is even important because you are someone who's always talked about like against cancel culture, about like speaking your mind out. Speaking your mind out. I left Egypt and I came to America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, but I didn't know that there was a fine print said that you cannot speak about Israel. I have issue with that. Israel is a foreign country. They're allies, good.
But you can speak about Israel.
How many people lost their jobs? Even Bella Hadid. Bella Hadid, by the way,
She hasn't lost her job.
No, but she talked about death threats. She's talking about like being silenced.
Sure.
By the way, Bella Hadid she's Palestinian. And you know who else? Gigi Hadid sisters.
I love the Hadid.
They are with us. If you are that high and you cannot speak about it, and it's not about...
Well, you can. You just have to... You can.
I'm just like wondering, as an American...
You do?
As an American, yeah. But like, I'm doing now because like the first interview went well.
Right.
I'm doing that because I want people to see that you can really speak up and not just get canceled, but get rewarded. My career is going fine.
Yeah.
It's great because I want people to have the courage. There should be no limits. I'm kind of like so confused as an American citizen why every American presidential candidate have to go and kiss the hand and bend the knees to AIPAC. This is a lobby that works for a foreign country interest. Why don't we have like a lobby for Saudi Arabia? It is they're giving us more money.
You know the good.
No, here you can't.
In Egypt, they arrested you.
Here you can't.
And they threatened you, and you would have probably ended up in prison or dead.
Here, a lot of people lost their jobs because they spoke up. But the thing is, there is dog whistles everywhere. As I told you at the beginning, you cannot just say it's like anti-Semite. Like, I mean, now, how come that the Palestinian flag is outlawed? By the way, it's outlawed in Israel. If you raise the Palestinian, you go to jail. And now they're saying like the Palestinian flag is a pro-Hamas. No, it's not a pro-Hamas. You know, I was doing a comedy show in Arizona, and a guy was like wearing like a kofia, like a scarf, and I took it, and I'm not like in hyperbole and like wearing symbols, but I just took it because like, why are we gonna outlaw colors and flags? That is absurd. That is not right. And I have a problem with how any criticism to Israel by some circles here are considered anti-Semite. This is not fair. Also, a lot of Zionists are against Israel, that they hate the Jews. You know, Mr. Zomlot, the Palestinian ambassador that you have, this guy lost 6 members of his family in an Israeli strike. And when he went on like some British news thing, he sat down and the lady told him, it's like, we are very sorry for your personal fun. I'm sure you don't condemn the killing of Israeli civilians. What? In the same moment. There's another girl like called Yara Eid. She was like on Sky News. And the girl was like crying, like, I lost 30 members of my family, 17 of them are children, I lost my best friend. And then, what did you think would happen? Forget about empathy.
I think a lot of people...
What about manners? Believe me, Piers, it's not really about that. There's a deep sentiment in the Middle East, in Arabs, that the West do not look at us as equals.
Well, you know what?
So what I did, I went to the machines.
Yeah.
And I asked ChatGPT simple questions. Do Israelis deserve to be free? And you know what they tell me? Yes, Israelis deserve the right like any other people. And then I asked the same question, do Palestinians deserve to be free? And you know what they tell me? It is complex. It is a sensitive issue. Okay, so basically...
Take a piece of this,
put
it in the olive oil.
Yes.
Which is from the West Bank.
Yeah, from the West Bank.
And then a little bit of this.
Yes.
Like that?
Yes, yes. This is like amazing oil coming from the olive tree. This has come from the West Bank. Since 1967, Israel have actually uprooted 800,000 olive trees, just to.
That is absolutely delicious.
I know.
Please thank your wife for me.
Thank